Hi, this is James again from pavedwave.org, and this is the second part of putting together an LDP board. As you can see right now, I've actually got the bolts all the way through. The rear ones are a little bit longer than the front ones because the way that the wedging works is very similar. And in the front, I've actually got the same. The front ones are 2-inch bolts. The one in the back is 2.5. And I haven't yet put in the final one because that's a two-step process, which is putting the 2.5 through this toe stop, get it into place. And this is the only time I really use power tools, is just when I have these really long bolts and I want to save a little time getting these through, just because it's nothing but threading. Because I prefer to hand tighten the rest, so I use mostly manual tools like a regular screwdriver to just to get it tightened down. But before I put these long bolts in here, the way I figured out that these would be long enough is basically by putting them through my riser that I'm intending to use. So this is for the front truck. I'm going to use a 1/4-inch flat riser, and then I'm going to put a 15-degree Cairo from the Cairo wedge kit. And what I do is basically put it through all the pieces, the risers and the truck, and then put it up next to the deck and see. And as you can see there's not enough bolt that's going to come through the deck to have threads sticking out to screw the nylock nut on, right? So that means that 2-inch bolt is not long enough for the back. So I have a 2.5, which is obviously going to be ample. It's going to be more than enough. As you can see, you've got a lot of threads left. In fact, you could probably use a 2.25-inch bolt here, but all I have on hand is 2.5. So that's what I'm going to go with. So obviously the optimal thing would be 2.25. So a lot of people worry about bending their bolts, and all I would say is don't worry about it. There's really bolts are going to bend, and the most I've heard is sometimes people have the heads have popped off on some of the pan head bolts, and that can happen, I guess, especially if you tighten them down quite a bit, maybe a little too much, then the pan heads might break. And I know that there's just been weak pan heads, but this seems to be the place that trips a lot of people up. And what it is sometimes there's a little jockeying you have to do, but I basically, as you can see, I put the bolts all the way through first, and then I just put the truck on flat, right, and then push it down as much as you can. And it's not gonna go all the way down at first. So the next step is when you put the nylock nuts on and tighten them down, you're actually going to you're gonna push this base plate all the way down to the risers. In the back, they're already pretty well seated, but basically you're gonna end up catching the front is gonna catch up with the back, and you'll be done there. And on the back, it's the same thing. I just put this one on the back. I'm using the hard angled riser, which is just a standard piece from Cairo. And then I'm actually using a couple of this is the 7-degree wedge and a little 3-degree wedge, just because I couldn't find my 10s. But basically that's what you're putting on I'm putting on another 10 degrees of wedge, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough nut here is the only thing. On this one, I might actually change this around. And that's, we'll see. See, there's just enough that if I put the nuts on now and tighten it down a lot, I can barely get the nylock working on it. So what I might do here, I'm only giving up like a couple degrees of wedge, which in my mind isn't really critical on the back. And see, that seats a lot better, and I've still got the height that I was after. And this back is going to be a little contentious, and that's because the holes are not really, the holes were a little bit off when they were drilled. So this is just one of those cases where you have to kind of wiggle it into place. And sometimes you even have to, I've even taken take one part of the base plate and kind of bend the bolt a little bit, just pre-bend it. I'm sure some, machinists, purists would say, never bend stuff like that. But, frankly, once you get this stuff all stuck together, it's not going anywhere. And there, it's on. And, like I said, I've never broken bolts just from bending them. So there I've got enough meat on all of the bolts sticking out. And I'll just tighten it down, and we'll be ready to slap on the wheels.